Welcome back. The other video that started the horizontal stab and the elevators is posting right now. That'll be up tomorrow. Today is the 20th of April. It is Easter. And I just got the fiberglass, this lightweight fiberglass cloth that I'm going to use to seal up the edges and wrap around this thing and hopefully finish it off. And I'm sitting here pointing. You guys can't see what I'm pointing at, but this whole seam right here along with the front, you can see I cut this edge off right here because it wasn't lining up very well. But I'm going to get that wrapped and on there and done so it can start curing. And then the elevators will come back off so I can do the foam block in and everything else for the horizontal stab part. So obviously not all going to happen today. We'll see how much of it I get done between today and tomorrow. Next few days, that's what I'm going to focus on. I'll put that all together in this one video, I hope, and then I'll get that posted, and then we'll be on to the rudder and the vertical stab. Speaking of the rudder and vertical stab, I spoke with Chris, and we were at a EAA meeting recently where we looked at Joe's plane, and he had USB ports out on his wing for his cameras. And I know a bunch of other people have done that. And obviously I like making YouTube videos, so when I fly, I do plan to have cameras on the plane. I put the camera mount on the vert stab. I will probably put one on the wingtip, at least the left wingtip, and maybe one on an inspection panel underneath, or at least a mount for them. So I've decided I am going to add power ports to these various locations. I've been looking at what I could find, and I found a couple of options I'm going to try out. They're both USB-C, so there's this one here. Has the cap. I kind of like it. The only thing I don't like about this one, obviously it's nice and weatherproof. It will sit kind of proud. I don't know if I like that or not. It might be okay for some spots, not others. And then I have this really nice screw-in type that's really low profile. It came with this rubber cap that doesn't really stick to it or do any good. But I know you can get little rubber plugs to go in here, so this is probably the one that's going to go on the tail. So that's coming up. Thank you, Chris, for talking me through that and telling me I should go ahead with it, because I do think it'll probably be a good idea. So we're going to add power and cameras to this airplane. Anyhow, that's coming up. Right now, it's fiberglass work, more fiberglass work on the horizontal stab and the elevator. So stick around. You know the routine. Voiceover Tim will tell you what happened or what didn't happen and what I managed to screw up this time. See ya. All right, welcome to the voiceover part. So, this did not take 1 or 2 days, as optimistic Tim in the intro had thought. This took considerably longer. All told, there's probably about 16 to 18-ish hours worth of work over the last several days. It is now Friday, April 25th. So when I recorded that intro, it was Sunday. So almost a full week. Obviously, I've had to work since then, but I have worked on this pretty much every single day. Lots of sanding, lots of letting things cure, and then sand some more and moving on to things I could work on. People have already commented that I am turning a metal airplane into a composite airplane. The joke's not lost on me. I am adding complexity and a little bit of weight to the plane. I don't believe it's very much, so I think it's negligible. Does it add performance? Maybe barely a little. Mostly, it's just an aesthetic. Had I had to do this over again, I might not go to the extent that I did. Doing the closeouts is actually pretty easy, putting that foam in and floxing it and then resining it. Doing this part here with the fiberglass, though, that took considerably more time to make nice than what I had anticipated. So much work went into that. So there you saw I put the first round of fiberglass on, which it was only one layer, not much at all, just enough to kind of float over that seam. And the first layer of Z-grip by Evercoat. Now, you do want to spread that on much thinner than what you saw me do there. It is a learning curve with this stuff. I've never done any of this before, really. That stuff sets up really, really quick, especially when you're used to working with the resin, which takes a little bit longer. And once it starts to set up, if you continue to try and spread it, you just make a big mess of it. It starts pulling itself back out. It gets really coarse and gritty. So you got to learn to work in smaller batches, and once it even remotely looks like it's starting to thicken up, just leave it alone. Be happy with what you got. Don't try and push it. Keep it thin and come back and do it again. The good thing is, because it sets up so quick, you can sand it after a very short period of time, whereas the resin, you got to let that cure for hours and hours, if not overnight, before you can actually sand on it. So I did all of that, took the elevators back off after I got the initial round of everything in there. Figured it was a lot easier to work on them up on the bench than it was to continue to try and work on them while they were hinged on the horizontal stab. So this is, I didn't record every round of this. I cut a lot out where I just didn't video me sanding and filling again. I don't even know how many rounds of each there was. At some point on this one, just to level things out, I decided to go back to some micro and some resin because I can make it thin enough that it would float out and level out, which it kind of did. But it is harder to sand, and as I mentioned before, it takes longer to set up. Here's a little more of that sanding action for you. This was, I think this was just more of the Z-grip, not the actual resin. Want to make sure you don't go blowing through the fiberglass if you can help it, or sanding through the lines you worked so hard to cover up, which I did several times. Also, a problem I had, I think it was right here on this one, and I didn't document it very well, but when I initially was getting set up to do this, I scuffed up the aluminum with Scotch-Brite, but I didn't go far enough out. I didn't anticipate how far out I would have to spread this to feather it out. So part of it didn't get scuffed, and the part that did not get scuffed made itself known very quickly, because as I was using the air gun to blow off the dust, it blew off a few chunks where it just never adhered to the aluminum, which I'm glad it did. I would rather know that now than have 200-mile-an-hour wind do the same thing later on. So I sanded all of that off, cleaned it off, scuffed up the aluminum properly, and reapplied again. So let that be a lesson to anybody out there. You've got to scuff this up to paint it anyway, so don't be afraid. Just get after it with that Scotch-Brite and scuff up a big, huge area. Anyways, that round of sanding is over, which means it must be time for more body filler. I am getting better at making it thinner and going a lot quicker with it. Now, one thing I did kind of screw up, and let's see, I think it's coming up, yeah. So now we're finishing the closeouts. This was after I had a shop visit, which was kind of cool. I had lunch and a shop visit with Chris and Mark from Florida, who's another RV8 builder. As soon as got done visiting with them, got back to work, which was putting in these closeouts. And again, this part's pretty easy. I would definitely recommend doing this again, and it really doesn't add much weight. The bulk of what's in there is foam, and it weighs pretty much nothing. Yeah, you're going to fill it with some flux and some resin, but it's a very tiny layer when it's all said and done that's actually over the top, especially after you sand it back down. And it makes for a very nice, clean aesthetic. Can I still get in there and inspect? Yes, I can. I can go in through various different ports. You can see those inboards are still open. I can get in there with the borescope and see things if I need to. This is where I kind of screwed up, though. When I cut those tips, I cut them with the elevators in place. I marked them and I cut them so that they would just clear the tip of the elevator. But I didn't really account for the fact that once I put the foam in, I would have to build up on it. So that made this a little thicker here. As well as the tip of the counterbalance on the elevator was going to get a little thicker because it was going to get resined in as well. Between those two, it pretty much closed up that gap. So once this was all done and I put it back together, I couldn't actually swing the elevators because it was almost touching, which meant I had to get out the big heavy-duty grit, perma-grit block, and proceed to sand away most of all of what you see me doing right now with the flux and particularly the micro. I basically took almost all the micro off that you're about to see me put on, and then I had to sand down into the foam a little bit and go a little further than what I wanted to so that I could then build it back up. So if you're going to go this route, before you do this step here, put the elevators back on, check your gap. You need an 1/8 inch gap between the leading edge of the counterbalance and that trailing edge of that wingtip. So I would check that first. Only takes a second. If you realize you're already getting too close, then now's a good time to file it down before you go adding what you see me adding here. But apparently I really like sanding because I've done a lot of it. Again, had this been at the end of my build, and this is what I was waiting on to start flying the plane, I might not go this in depth because it was a lot of work. I might do the closeouts you see here, and then I probably would have just put some micro in the seam along the fiberglass tip and the skin and called it a day rather than try and make it disappear altogether. It's another technique I'd gotten from a different website. I liked it. I am happy that I did it. I would not do it again. You won't see me doing that same thing to the vertical stab and the rudder and those tips, not because it's too much work, but because where the screws are at for that camera mount and everything like that, I can't afford to feather that all out and make those disappear. So that will have to get a different technique. But that'll be what's coming up next. I just finished this today. I am done messing with it for right now. Hopefully I'm going to go fly with the new Aero Club tomorrow and get checked out so I can fly their planes. But I'll get back after it and I'll start working on that horizontal stab and the rudder, along with documenting the USB ports I'm going to put in, the conduit, and all the other stuff I alluded to in the short video. So more stuff to come. I did make my final payment to Vans for the fuselage. So that is going to be here in June. We are moving right along. All right, what you see me doing right now. See how I had to cut that free? Once I did put the elevators back on and got everything sanded to the right gap, I didn't have a good line between the bottom outer edge of that tip and the counterbalance. So I had to build up the tip a little bit, and I had to get the same curve that's on the counterbalance so they'd match. So the easiest way was I just clamped the elevators in their neutral position and then mixed up a really thick batch of resin and micro and just went over the edge of the gap and made the two lines from one piece to the other the same. I wish I had recorded it. I really didn't. I was just too busy doing it. I left a small enough gap. I didn't obviously fill that whole thing in so that I could get that hacksaw blade in there and cut it back apart and then just sand it back down. So that actually worked out well. So here you see the final product. As far as all of that goes, yeah, there's a few pinholes and a couple imperfections that you can see now that there's primer on it. It's the whole point of the primer, so you can see that stuff. So it'll need a little bit more tweaking. Probably won't do that until it's time for paint. This is good to go as far as I'm concerned. So last item, decided it was time to stop putting it off and go ahead and drill that scary hole through the control horns for the final bearing bolt. And the way I decided to do it is I have a transfer punch, or a set of transfer punches. That is a 1/4 inch hole in that bearing. Vans recommends you use a 1/4 inch bushing tube that you can then stick a number 40 drill bit through and then drill through that without hurting the bearing. But the transfer punch fit perfectly and left a nice precise point and dimple in the control horn. that I then used to drill a number 40 pilot hole, and then upsize that to the final size of 1/4 inch. And you saw me moving the elevator back and forth while I was tapping on that transfer punch. I wanted to make sure when I pulled it out that I only had one mark and that this thing was rotating cleanly around that one point. If I had several marks, then I'd have a problem and I'd have to go figure that out before I committed to drilling a hole. So drilled the hole out and cleaned it out with one of the countersink bits. Just took the chamfer off the edge there, or the burr off the edge. And already marked that other side, so now I just got to drill it. I have gotten better at putting the elevators on. Doing this with it vertical is definitely easier than when it's sitting horizontal. Gravity helps you. Also, using a couple of Allen wrenches as temporary hinge pins while you put the other pins in, or the bolts in, works really well. If you make the homemade bolt keeper tool, I recommend putting a bend in it. I'll remake that tool. Maybe I'll post a short on how to make it and what it looks like. Definitely helps getting the bolts into those holes, and you need to use it for all of these hinges, the elevators, the ailerons, rudders. So there's the bolt installed, no binding. The thing works perfectly, and just a quick demonstration of what everything looks like now that it's all sanded and primed and how it all kind of fits together. Hope you all enjoyed it. It was a lot of work. I still think it was worth it. Glad it's behind me and I'm on to the vertical stab. So stick around, like, comment, subscribe, all that other good stuff, and I will see you all on the next one.